Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dave, and welcome to the Unconventional Therapist's Guide to Nothing. I'm here with my co host. His name is Greg.
Co-host with the
And
most.
no, not even. You're just going to keep doing a little shrug
Yeah,
until
yeah,
I say yes.
yeah. And
All
then you
right,
say like
fine.
maybe,
He's
maybe.
not the most. He's got some,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Well, look, I'm fun to have a conversation with Dave. There's a segue for you.
Wait, did you just give yourself credit for that?
No,
Okay.
no. I was
You were told that by somebody?
no. I'm told that I was just trying to get to the point that like I've been having a really sort of fun time looking at the things that people say on the Patreon, and we'd like there to be more people to say things on the Patreon.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
All right.
All right.
So, Patreon. We decided we're going to talk about this at the beginning of the episode rather than the end, in case a lot of people, as we start to dwindle down the episodes, they probably are like, oh, I think I get the gist, guys. Thanks a
Mm,
lot. See you
Thanks a
next
lot.
week.
Mhm.
So, yeah, the Patreon thing. I just want to kind of reiterate what this is all about. This is a community building experience that we're trying to shift over to a platform that kind of lends itself to that. So Patreon has these tier levels, membership things. I think everybody associates Patreon with being something you have to pay for.
Yeah.
Not true. Entry level to our membership, our community is free. If you want to join the paid tiers, that's totally optional. And there is some additional content that you will get if you do that. But if you just want to join as a free member, we would love that because there's community post boards and
Videos.
there's video. It's the only place you're going to get video right now. Also, as we go along, we'll do polls. We'll just, be looking for participation and conversations and hopefully seeing people have conversations with each other, which would be amazing. And
Amazing.
all about things that, we're discussing on here and, expanding on those things. So while these episodes are kind of like brief overviews or introductions to certain topics, we're hoping that the Patreon community can kind of take that a step further.
Let's, all right. Well, perfect. That being said, without much further ado, let's get into this thing, right?
Okay.
I can't even remember if we did the intro.
We did.
Okay. So, Dave,
Greg.
something I do often, well, before I even say that, like myths, legends, religions, ideologies, all these things capture us from the moment we can even understand words. And that's true. I mean, we read our kids Harry Potter and all kinds of different little stories. This is all drawing from something, something that in reality we shouldn't even have to talk about. And it's interesting because the reason why we shouldn't have to talk about this is because it's known to us prior to our birth, which is a wild thought to think about. I mean, it's known throughout human history. We all kind of are born with this knowledge. It's part of what Jung calls the collective unconscious, but it's these things that exist and we are aware of and we recognize without ever being taught about them. And that's why stories and religions and all these things kind of really resonate with us because they use these quote unquote archetypes as, these ideas that we can kind of identify with. So like for example, the perfection doesn't exist. Like Plato talks about this with forms. I don't know if you remember that, like, but he talked about how like there's no perfect triangle, but we can imagine it. He talked about how like perfection doesn't exist in nature. If you've never seen a palm tree before in your life, you're on a different side of the world, but you know what a tree is, you'll still be able to recognize it because you know the essence of a tree. So even though you see something that's completely foreign, you already have this information like, okay, that's a tree. It's an interesting thing. And I bring this all up to say that inside of all of us are like perfect versions of the symbols of humanity, and that's what archetypes are. So there's like a multitude of archetypes. There's not just one or two. We'll go through a bunch of them. And we're striving in some ways to become perfect versions of these ideas, right? So maybe that's good. Like, aim high, miss high. We've talked before about how Ben Franklin wrote down in his little book of virtues, like all these ideas that he wanted to reach every single day and then never did. But because he was trying to be this person and tracking that, he was better than he ever thought he could be, right? So these things that we're talking about are like the foundations of identity. They're so big and symbolic that each one of them that we'll talk about, whether it's trickster, mother, father, whatever, they've all birthed a million stories and entities and saints and gods and goddesses and all these things. And Carl Jung is kind of the person who brought this to the forefront. He didn't invent them, obviously, but he says a couple things about them that I think are interesting. And one is that they're universal and innate. We all cross cultures recognize the ideal mother. We recognize the trickster. We recognize like there's Loki in Greek mythology and there's the devil in Western sort of culture and Christianity, right? So it's like these things exist throughout history. And like we said, they're not learned, they're just in us. And that's for me is the hardest part to kind of wrap your head around. And he also believed in the idea of individuation, which we won't get into too much because we talked about in the Young episode. And that's just kind of like recognizing how to integrate these things into your persona and archetypes are crucial to becoming you. And I think that's something that we're going to talk about throughout this. So Dave, I'm
So
sorry.
so these are things that are already inside of us, and apparently we have all of them. It's
Mhm.
just some of we tend to have like one, I guess, or maybe a couple that are dominant. Is it
Sure.
specified within this if it's one or can be more than one?
So that's a great question. Well, think about it like this: like throughout your life, the different archetypes are going to play different roles in your life. Like the father archetype is different when you're a child versus when you're an actual father, right? Like you think about it
So it can
differently, and
shift.
it
Yeah.
shifts. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously most people are going to, find this episode to be very familiar. As if you've listened to our Enneagram episode, I think we even talk about this very briefly and kind of also suggest, and we did the Carl Jung episode.
Mhm.
um, we kind of suggested we should do a full episode on the archetypes because it's worth doing. But it's, as we're looking at this, I'm like, wow, this is so similar to Enneagrams. I hope it doesn't sound redundant. I mean, it's his version of it.
Yeah, and I
And I
don't think
know
it will. It's
yeah.
almost like think about it like this, Dave. You know how they say that you're born and with a personality, right? We can agree on that, right? Like it's almost like your disposition and your temperament is sort of kind of steadfast throughout your entire life. So when you're born, you're already a certain way. And how is that, right? Without these things that exist already in our heads. Because think about like a person, like how you've developed your own identity. We'd love to think that it's all from yourself, but you've, even in like on a smaller scale, you've looked at other people. Maybe it's your dad, maybe it's your mom, maybe it's a coach or a teacher or someone that you've seen in your life, and you're like, ooh, that's like the archetype in my mind of the teacher. And I'm going to take things from that and use that and become part of that. So you need these archetypes to develop your own identity, or else it'd be chaos without it.
Yeah. So I think with Enneagrams, and even like when we did the attachment style episode, a big emphasis of identifying where you land in those things is all about learning how, like, where you are, what your strengths are, so you can also focus on where maybe your weaknesses lie and improve and be a more well-rounded individual.
Yes.
um with this, I guess you can kind of do the same, but I think it almost, for me, as I'm doing this research, and I could be totally off base, so I'm sure I'm going to get a comment from somebody at some point saying like you don't get it or something
Like an
like that.
archetype expert.
Yes, exactly. But for me, it feels like just it's more about just self-awareness. So
Mhm.
you know where your intentions are coming from, you know what your fears are, you know, you're going to look to people who maybe balance you out if you're in a place of employment and using this in like a leadership skill type
Mhm.
way. You're going to use it to like understand how to interact with people better, and just even understand yourself better in the decision making processes that you're going through. um
And
it
even if you're
feels.
like, even with Enneagrams, if you're looking at all of them, like say you're looking at like there's the sage, there's this trickster, and the hero, and you're thinking to yourself like, oh my God, like I'm very coming off of very much as a trickster. I have a lot of those traits, but I don't really like that. Like maybe I can like, what's this hero thing about? Like maybe I can kind of lean
but
into that a little
but I
bit.
don't I don't know that I hear that in this one. Do you? It doesn't sound like you're trying to change who you are. It's trying to understand yourself better so you can understand where the choices you're making in life. It's that's where I feel like this differs from my
Yeah,
in my understanding of this at least. It doesn't sound like your focus is on changing who you are or becoming something different or trying to strengthen other things. It's more about
mhm,
just that self-awareness so you kind of
exactly. I
see.
was gonna say looking at it, like looking at it, but by looking at it, and we talked about this with the shadow when we've talked about it in the past. It's like, if there's this happened recently. There was a spider in my car, and that will change your behavior, right? Just so like being unaware of archetypes in their existence in our mind or their our dark side in some ways, right? Like the shadow, like will influence your behavior. But if you turn around and look at it, and I know where that spider is, and I found it, and I have a good idea, a good sense of where it is. It's like it's in the little cup holder, and I can keep an eye on it. It's way less dangerous to change my behavior if I have a sense of like my if I'm aware of it, right?
Sure.
So if there are like if a part of you is trickster, having that awareness about it is cool because then you can like limit it and even try to understand like why that is and what's good
Yeah.
about it. I just
I
find it
don't
I
think,
find it very
but I
interesting.
also don't think there's like bad ones.
No, that's the
That's
thing.
that's an important thing with this.
I
Even
guess
though
I guess trickster I think of as a bad one, but it's kind of not.
it's kind of not. If you and we'll get into the descriptions a little bit, but like I feel like there's strengths in all of them, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like you could just had a kind of a big part of this for me. It feels like it's about authenticity and becoming and accepting that person that you are, those
Hmm.
traits that you have, and understanding where they're coming from, and you know how it's a part of you and how it plays out in you. Let's talk a little bit about the shadow and all that stuff because that will help provide some context to what I'm just talking about right now.
Okay, so the way, and we won't get too much into this because this is an episode of its own, and we talked a lot about the shadow and the young one if you're super interested in it. And we also ironically talked a lot about the shadow in the Krampus episode. I don't know if you remember that
Yes, yep.
because Krampus would be the shadow of Santa Claus. Anyways,
Hmm.
shadow would be like the hidden parts of our psyche. So, as we know, Freud's idea of I said idea, and I'm sorry for that. But Freud's idea of the subconscious would be very sexual, and like be party at Caligula's house, right? Like just all repressed deviancy is Freud's idea of the subconscious and the shadow. But Jung was like a much deeper than that, and he understood that the subconscious was like way more than that. It's not just about this, you know, hidden parts. It's also like things about you that are intrinsically you that maybe the culture that you're born into doesn't accept, right? So it's like there's parts of you that you hide unconsciously. And shadow work is kind of looking at that, turning around and kind of trying to look at that darkness, even though it's uncomfortable, and just to see like, well, like what's the real motivation of that? Is it really dangerous? Probably not, right? Like
Sure.
it's probably, so it's just interesting to kind of, it's almost scary in a sense when I think about these things because it's like Jung really wants you to examine your subconscious. And I think for a lot of people that's scary. I know that's scary for me too. When people are like, "Oh, let's take ayahuasca or a mushroom so we can like really fucking take a trip into our own brains." I'm like, "I think I'm all set."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I really I'm not I don't relate with that too well. Let the
So
subconscious do the breathing and the fucking heart beating and
so we
I'm good
got
with that.
is shadow one of the four primary
Yeah,
archetypes?
so
Okay.
self would be the first one, and that's just that integration of our conscious and unconscious. And that's
Okay.
just knowing why, like understanding our drives, where they're coming from, our fears, where they're coming from, our desires, where they're coming from, and integrating them as closely as possible. So not doing things, but knowing why you're doing them, not just being driven by your unconscious
Okay.
mind and your fears. The third part, so that's one self shadow. The third part is anima and animus. And it's essentially in all of us, and I'm sure a lot of people don't want to hear this, but it's true. Inside of every human being, there exists female elements and male elements.
Right.
And you're on some sort of spectrum of that.
Yeah. And the way that I was understanding it too is it's they're symbolizing this true version of ourselves
Hmm.
and not necessarily the male and female elements within like societal expectations and of gender roles. So whatever that means is kind of how it's supposed to be understood.
Like if you're a nurturing,
Man,
man, yeah, like it's okay, even though that might not feel like okay, it's like okay to kind of like accept that part of you. Like that might be something that you upset
I
that,
feel like
and if
this
you
was
deny that,
probably needed to be understood more in
yeah.
previous decades than in today's. On like
Mhm.
this is probably something that isn't even needed to be said as much.
No, I think this kind of goes without saying at this point. But
Yeah,
the last sort of, and this is the last four major sort of like overarching umbrella archetypes.
yeah.
That's
So
not
these
the,
aren't the archetypes themselves, just so
yeah,
people
yeah,
understand that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Those are more fun. But well, actually, I think the persona is actually really fun. And Jung describes it as a mask that where we wear the, well, I guess what he's saying is like it's the way that we choose to present ourselves to the outside world. And I'm not sure I would call that a mask. I would almost call that like a relationship between the internal world and the external world, where it's you decide what you want the world to see. And I don't think that's necessarily inauthentic
it's
because
all
it's,
semantics at this point because
yeah,
I think me and you understand the concept that we can wear a mask and it doesn't mean that we're being a fake phony. It's a version of ourselves. But
yeah,
we're
yeah.
choosing the elements that we want to show the world and we're formulating that to create a version of ourselves that we feel is appropriate and accepted in whatever domain or environment or setting that we're going into. We talk about this all the time. The version of ourselves that people are going to see if they step into our office is going to be much different than the version of ourselves that they might
In the
find
club.
in the club,
That's
in the
right.
club. So it's totally different. Or
That's right.
backyard barbecue Greggy boy over there smoking up some meats.
Yeah, yeah, just
Uh,
meats, and maybe yeah, it might be a different guy, right?
Totally different guy.
Also, like we might put on a different face if we had to leave and go to I don't know, any kind of like maybe a somber event,
Yeah.
someone's sick in the hospital. We're not gonna like walk in there and be like I'm in barbecue mode. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's there's
You're also not
there's
going to go into in barbecue mode to like a job interview, but you're still trying to be yourself, right?
You're trying because you are being yourself
Yes.
and that's exactly what dude, that's so good, Dave. That's exactly right because our self is a collection of these
Right.
archetypes on varying forms.
I kind of go nuts when I hear people talk about like people being fake phony in like in some circumstances when I understand that like no you're not being fake phony, you're just understanding like the
Social norms.
norms of like
Yeah.
work life or how
Mhm.
you should present at a job and like
Yeah,
or
yeah.
whatever it is that they're
They're like, you're
whatever
a phony. You should have saw him I saw him at the bar at 2 a.m.
yeah
He was acting way different. Yeah,
yeah look at
I
that
bet he
phony.
was.
So we're using a mask in a much different way than what I think kind of like people the way people use it nowadays, which is usually
Yeah,
like I'm masking something, I'm hiding something. Well, I mean, you are hiding certain things. There are certain
which is
things you don't
also
want to see.
fine
You don't, yeah,
sometimes.
which is fine, and maybe it should be hidden. It's
Hmm.
at sometimes. It's interesting because we talk about the group therapy model that we've been doing, that interpersonal group, and I had a whole conversation with the group about masks. No, I'm sorry, about the shadow and the persona, and it was interesting because a lot of them, almost everybody had something in there that they considered to be their shadow that they didn't want to present to the group, because we
Hmm.
are talking about it in the context of what do you show here, what do you not show.
Hmm.
But it was just super interesting because everybody's thing is a little different.
Everybody's things a little different,
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
not the same for everybody. So, and that's what makes working with people so wonderful. They're so unique.
interesting. Yeah.
So
So I mean, what do you think? Like those are the four kind of overarching.
So yeah, essentially, we're looking at the archetypes to provide a little bit of a insight into who our inner selves are, which will allow us to understand ourselves on a different level and hopefully lead to being able to communicate authentically, become a better version of ourselves, gain self awareness, understand our motivators, our fears, our desires, and maybe have more successful relationships and communication with each other. So that's like kind of the reason why anyone would want to explore this stuff. In case you're listening to us talk and this sounds
Yeah.
like a bunch of like mumbo jumbo,
I
super
know.
heady stuff that
Yeah.
like, why do I even care? These are
Well,
the
think about
reasons.
this. If the people that listen to this podcast are interested in sometimes strange mental health occurrences, think about the archetypes like this. I was thinking about this as far as like dissociative identity disorder. Would that be all of your archetypes
Bouncing
throughout
off
your
of each
life?
other.
Just yeah, just like you presenting themselves all at once, or taking a bigger role and like sort of pushing you out of control. I don't know, or even like schizophrenia. It's like, do they have an actual voice? Like this collective unconscious that's been around since human development. It's just a
Right.
wild like thought. But like
Yeah.
let's get into
Like
these things a little
also
bit.
like manic moments. Do
It's
you shift into a more ego centric version of yourself during those times? I don't know.
I- and we all kind of feel those moments though where you're like kind of like, oh man, like I'm kind of like you just feel different, right? I mean, I don't know. It's something to think about. But
Yeah.
like let's talk about some of these actual,
So yeah,
archetypes.
so there's 12 of them. Greg, I'll go through the first six and you do the last six, okay?
Okay.
And what I want everyone to understand is they're gonna be lumped into three at a time. And the reason for that is along with the archetypes themselves, this is where this all becomes a lot. So it's the same with the Enneagrams, there's all these like then there's this part and this part and this part. So we have
Enneagrams, zodiac, friggin' Chinese
yeah,
calendar.
same thing.
Oh, yeah.
So we're gonna have the archetype itself. I'm gonna tell you kind of like the what that archetype seeks, what their goal is usually geared towards. And then for each cluster of three, there's a cardinal orientation. And these are like the bigger things
Okay.
that the archetype group, that the group of three typically are seeking from the world. Okay.
Yes.
So let's just start here. So archetype number one is the ruler. What's breeze? Should I just breeze through these and then we'll go deeper into them, or should we go deeper into them as we're going?
Yeah, like do what feels right.
Let's breeze through them and then we'll go deeper into them. So the first group of three is the ruler, the caregiver, and the creative artist version of an archetype person.
Okay.
So the ruler is all about is seeking control. The caregiver is about providing service, and the creator and the artist are about innovation. And they're grouped into the cardinal orientation of order, and they're seeking to provide structure to the world in some
Okay.
capacity.
Which makes sense is kind of like what we're all comfortable with, right? Like why does this world that we're living in make sense? Like there's got to be a part of us
Right.
that's working on that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like whether it's bringing up a child, whether it's, being a leader and like
Me finding meaning, right? These
yeah,
are like
or
finding meaning.
understanding the world through creation and things like that.
Okay.
So the next group of three, we have the sage, which is about knowledge. We have the innocent, which seeks safety, and we have the explorer, which seeks freedom. And this group is all about freedom, actually. And they're on this like spiritual journey and they're yearning for paradise. So it's about pleasure. It's about, seeking things that feel good
Mm, okay.
or
I'm gonna keep
seeking things that feel comfortable, I should say, because we have innocent in there, which is all about safety, and safety is comfort, right?
comfort. Yes. So these are the ones that I'm like, oh, they're slightly dangerous for but this is why it's an important part of your personality, but it needs to be balanced out. So, because if you were just seeking knowledge,
Interesting. It's danger, huh?
yeah, well, just in terms of like, look, freedom without responsibility is chaos. That's no
Sure.
freedom at
So,
all.
and the only
So,
reason why I actually like had to pause and question on that is so each one there's like one each in each group so far there's been like one that I'm like, ooh, I don't understand how that one fits in this
mhm.
completely, so I'm trying to like rationalize it. And when you said I can understand what you mean with like the sage, which is that power of knowledge, the
Yeah,
explorer looking
almost
for
like the
freedom,
yeah,
but then
yeah,
there's innocent, which is seeking safety. But I guess if you're
yeah.
seeking safety, that you might not be as caring about others because you're kind of prioritizing your own safety. Is that where
That's
you were going with
exactly
that?
right. That's
Okay,
exactly right. Like
sure.
seeking safety, seeking ease, seeking comfort.
Yes.
All things that we've
And
warned
comfort
about.
can be dangerous because you don't
Mhm.
necessarily move forward if you're always seeking comfort and safety, right?
Right. Exactly.
So it can also leave you stalemate.
So that's, but also those are important parts of the personality, right? So it's cool that like this is all encompassing. And the next three we're going to be talking about here are the rebel, looking for liberation and stepping outside of what the social norms are. And you have the hero, which is looking for, in a sense, mastery. Or a lot of things. I guess the hero is one of my favorite archetypes that I identify with. I shouldn't say that, but I just I like the idea of doing good versus like for good's sake, right? The wizard or the magician, and they're kind of tied in with power and seeking like an I don't know, maybe an easy path to power, but all these things are looking to leave a mark on the world. So like legacy in a sense. Because when you think about the rebel or the outlaw, that's someone that sounds bad, but it's also like I don't
No,
know,
yeah, seeking liberation is quite the opposite.
quite
It's
the
it's
opposite, right?
yeah, it's not conforming. It's
It's
kind of
Copernicus
resisting.
saying that the Earth is in the center of the universe. Maybe it's
Yeah.
something different, right? It's like these are parts of human development that are important.
But you left
Uh,
you left the cardinal orientation now. I wonder if
and
you
the
did that in
cardinal
I wonder if you did
or
that intentionally.
to leave a mark on the world?
No, it's ego.
Well, yes, I
It's
yes.
ego.
It is ego, which you're
Also
right.
kind of dangerous.
It's also kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I hadn't even and I guess that's true, right? Man, it's so kind of hard to look at yourself and say, like, why would I want to be a hero? I guess a lot of it is tied up in ego. Interesting. And then the last three, the jester, who is kind of looking for pleasure and maybe at other people's expenses, maybe not sometimes, just having fun. The everyman, which is an interesting. Now, if you thought of the archetype for the everyman, like, I mean, just like in the real world, would you think of anyone?
His name's like probably Joe.
Yeah, like I almost thinking of like Tim Allen on
Oh,
back in
jeez.
the like Home Improvement or like George Costanza
George
or
Costanza. Yeah.
like you know
I
what I mean? Like
oh, Tim Allen's character.
yes, on Home
Yeah, not
Improvement.
Tim
Okay.
Allen himself.
No, I don't know
Correct.
too much about Tim Allen himself, like the actual man. But the character or like I don't know, Carl Winslow,
Wow.
remember?
Love Carl.
Or from Urkel? I mean, what a great everyman. Um, and then the lover. Ooh,
Ooh,
that's important. That made its way.
ooh, Dougie.
And look, that's these are like there's components of well-being, and this one covers the social side of things.
It's
Like,
weird how much I like identify with the lover, you know?
I know, dude.
And
I
you're
think it's
like
just
the
because someone's
hero, I'm
always
the
told
lover.
me, like, you're a good lover, and I'm like,
Oh, I hate that you always
just one of
put
my
me in that
archetypes.
archetype. I hate that you always put me in that archetype. I guess you're right. Jesus.
I know. I guess I am the lover archetype.
You
I
know,
guess
it'd
it's the
be
archetype for lovers.
it'd be funny if like you were talking to your therapist that you talk to once a month and and
Yeah.
you're like telling him how you're a hero archetype. He's like, "Oh, that's funny. I always found you to be the innocent archetype." And you're like,
Nope, you're wrong,
"Wah,
and you're
wah,
fired.
wah, wah."
So listen though, I think there's like when you look through these, there's like kind of well known. I don't know. I guess I just call them categories of wellness, but like the ruler and like the caregiver, it's like order. So that's important. So purpose, getting your life together, structure, agency, right? These are all important things. Like the freedom, the ability, it's like agency again, the ability to do the things that you want to do. Leaving a mark on the world, like doing something bigger than yourself, finding meaning. These are all very important things, and you need them all to be kind of well-rounded. And I think part of what Jung is saying is like he lists them all because it's important to embody some part of
A little
all of
bit of all of
them.
them. Yeah. And you said dangerous to when we were talking about which group was it, the first one? I
Yeah,
know
like the
when we were talking about the freedom
innocent,
one,
yes.
and then I said, well, maybe with ego. Actually, the social one, all of these can be dangerous
Hmm.
if not kind of understood. I think that's another part of this. This is why you want to have that self-awareness and understand where you lean towards when you make decisions. So you can
Hmm.
understand and hopefully you can kind of like navigate it to make sure you're making good decisions now that you understand your motivations better, right? Your
Yes.
fears and motivations, I should say. Because I mean, if you're the jester, you're pleasure seeking, that obviously can get out of hand.
Hmm.
Being an everyman, it can be a dangerous thing. Oh, with that seeking of wanting to belong, you can do some pretty dangerous things along the way just to belong, right?
Hmm.
And being a lover can get you in some
Look,
trouble.
being an everyman allowed, you know, for Hitler's rule of Nazi Germany, right? I mean, that's
Yeah,
just going along to get along. I
100%.
mean,
I mean,
yeah.
even in smaller versions, and you have like, you know, instances of riots and looting, and violence breaks out, and suddenly
Hmm.
you're looking to belong to something that could be potentially dangerous, that could go really south. There's so many different things that belonging can be good, that you want to be, that you're social and that's your motivation, but it can also be a very dangerous thing.
Again.
So let's look at the individual archetypes a little bit more deeply.
Okay.
Greg, you want to start off with the first one?
Sure. I guess I'll do the innocent since I'm most associated with
Oh
that.
man, I didn't even do that on purpose. Dang.
So it's free to be yourself, right? And the core desire of this is to get to paradise and to be happy. And then the fear is that you're going to be punished, right, for doing something bad or wrong. So you're kind of like always worried about that.
You're always worried about getting in trouble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So the strategy is just to do the right thing as
Okay.
much and as often as you can, whether it's the right thing, I think, in terms of like how other people see them, though. I almost feel like it's like a trying to fit in kind of thing. And the weakness for this is like you're boring. You know what I mean? You're naive, you're innocent, and you're boring. But the talent would be, you have this faith and optimism, and you're coming from the right place, right?
Yeah.
So the innocent is also known as utopian, the traditionalist, the naive, the mystic, the saint, the romantic, and the dreamer.
Got it. So when they say to get to paradise, what do you think that means?
I mean, I think it ultimately means either self-actualization or heaven kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like to
Yeah.
get to whatever is on the other side that, is, and that's kind of what I'm striving for. I'm not going to do anything wrong so
Hmm.
that I can make sure I get the best outcomes. And I'm always worried that people are going to think I'm doing something wrong, and that will somehow sabotage my ultimate goal of getting to paradise. And it's funny because like they say these people are boring. That's an interesting thing to think about too, because do you think of yourself as boring?
Yeah.
You do?
I mean,
You-
I don't know. In
You're
my
afraid to
older
get in
age,
trouble, and like,
no,
won't
no.
take, but like, have you ever hung out with like, in some capacity? I don't either.
Yes.
But then
Yeah.
have you ever been around some people and you're like, oh, damn, I'm boring compared to these people?
Yes. And something boring in a good way. But I remember being like I remember playing Manhunt. Remember playing Manhunt with your kids when
Yeah.
you were a kid? And some people, I had this one friend, I'm not even gonna name him, but we'd always find him last because he would feel too bad about going to other people's yards, so he'd be in his own yard. So we'd be like, all right, well, we know where to find him. He'll be like,
Yeah.
under
So you
his
didn't even worry
trampoline.
about him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You're like, we
yeah.
already know that guy is. Yeah. No, and I mean, that's funny. That's a funny way
Good
to think
guy,
about
one of the
it.
best guys I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think like, how we talked about like how we embody all these things, and that sometimes that innocent part of us might come out depending on who we're surrounded by. And we might have a moral issue or some kind of ethical issue with the kind of things that a certain group is doing. And that innocent part archetype might come out during that time. It
Yeah.
might make us say, like, oh, wait, these people are a little too hardcore for me.
Yes.
I'm not going to do these things that
Let
they're
me
that
lean
they're
into my
doing.
innocent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I definitely think I can see how like some of these a little bit of all these things are in us. All right, so the next one is the everyman, which we had talked about already.
Mhm.
So their motto would be all men and women are created equal. Their core desire would be all about connecting with others with the goal of wanting to belong. And their greatest fear, surprise, surprise, is being left out or
Mhm.
to stand out from the crowd. So for something happens that causes them to get a spotlight on them, that wouldn't be good for them. They're all about developing ordinary, solid values. They sound so boring.
Hmm.
being down to earth, the common touch, and their weakness is losing one's own self in an effort to blend in for the sake of superficial relationships. Their talents are realism, empathy, and lack of pretense. And yeah, they're
It's
just
a weird
known
talent.
as
Like, oh, what's your biggest talent? Lack of pretense.
realism.
Yeah, yeah. So the everyman, I don't know about that one.
I mean, we all have a little bit of that in us too.
Well, to
Again,
exist as a society,
we have
you
to.
have to have a bit of it,
Yeah.
right?
And when I say it's boring, if you connect with that one, then I'm not trying to like
Boring.
insult you. Yeah. No, I'm just saying on paper, it reads it's one of those ones where I know that like, yeah, 100% it's probably a thing in me at times as well. But like it's not the thing I want to necessarily brag about.
Okay. And the next one is worth bragging about, I think, the hero. I think if you view the world as a hero, it's a pretty good thing.
Oh,
Because I
let's
think
see. Go into it
heroes
and
and villains have a similar origin story. We've mentioned that
we'll
before. Anyways,
determine this right now.
so the motto would be, where there's a will, there's a way. And I like that. And the core desire is to prove one's worth through courageous acts. Mm.
A little
And
insecure, if you will.
yes, I know. So the goal is expert mastery in a way that improves the world, which is good. The greatest fear is weakness and vulnerability. So, almost like a Marty McFly, don't call me a chicken situation. That could get you into some trouble. Like,
Yeah.
does that like a
Street
reference Lost
racing and stuff
Lost
like
in the
that.
world? Yeah, like yes, yes. Like when your biggest fear is to be vulnerable or thought of as weak, or then how heroic are you being? So it's like we all have this balance, right? The strategy is to be as strong and competent as possible, and the weakness is arrogance. Always needing to have this a battle, always need to be engaged in some kind of battle, right? So you almost look for it. And the talent, of course, is competence and, you know, courage, right? So the hero is the warrior, the crusader, the rescuer, the Batman, the Superman, the whoever, right? The Dragon Slayer, Tom Brady
Oh,
to us
geez.
New Englanders, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one because with all of them, there's pros and cons. There's things that you see and you're like, oh, that's such that's such a great characteristic to embody. And then there's
Mm.
other parts of it like you're worried about being viewed as weak.
Hmm.
So are you the hero if that's your biggest fear that you're worried? Because then maybe you see some stuff in yourself that you're worried about what people will see. What is your shadow really hiding?
Uh-huh. The next one to me is the real hero, and and you take it on.
The caregiver.
Hmm.
Motto is love yourself, love your neighbor as yourself, love yourself.
The Freudian slip in
I know.
there.
So your core desire is to protect and care for others. The goal is to help others. Your greatest fear is selfishness and ingratitude. Strategy is doing things for others. Your weakness is martyrdom, and being exploited. And your
The
talent
caregiver is the real hero, though, huh?
is compassion and generosity. And it's funny. Does this come up for you a lot with individuals in therapy? Like you run into this type of personality?
Um,
They're like doing something for them. They're so focused all the time on helping others that they don't take care of themselves. And
yeah,
thought of
maybe.
taking care of themselves, doing something special for themselves, treating themselves makes them feel guilty. But
Yeah.
then you have to remind them that you're doing that to be a better version of yourself
It's
for
a
the
very mom
people you're
situation. Yeah. Like
I
it is a very
get
mom thing.
I have so many people that
Not all moms, I'll tell you that.
that's
But
true.
you know what I mean? But it can be like that where I've come across that for sure, like mom guilt, and we've talked
I
about that.
yeah, and it's definitely a personality type, and it's interesting because as with all these, that part of it right there, that weakness can really impact people. So it's important to understand the weaknesses that are associated with this, not just the strengths.
I know, and you know what's interesting as we're talking about this, like you're hearing these and you're thinking of every, like Paradise Lost, Canterbury Tales, the Iliad, the Odyssey, like they're all based on archetypes.
Yeah.
They all draw from that, and it's not even on purpose. It's wild, right?
Hmm.
So the explorer, the archetype would be young Dora.
I was just literally just gonna say something about Dora.
Yes. All right. So the motto is don't fence me in. Nobody puts baby in a corner.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
So the core desire is the freedom to find out who you are through exploring the world, which is actually beautiful,
I
right?
love
It's a
this one
beautiful
actually.
sentiment, you
Yeah.
know? And you're way more of an explorer than I am.
You used to be a big explorer.
Oh, I've been to, up, I don't know how many countries, tons.
Yeah.
But that was literally at this point over, well over a decade ago, even more.
You can blame your kids.
Yeah. But no, honestly, like I went to Providence today. I'm like, this is far enough. So, the goal is to experience a better, more authentic, more fulfilling life. And the fear is like getting trapped, conformity, like inner emptiness. But the thing that the explorer has got to remember is anywhere you go, there you are, right? That's so there's like part of that, that's part of it too. And the strategy is journey, seeking out and experiencing new things, escape from boredom. But the weakness is aimless wandering and becoming a sort of misfit. The talent is autonomy, ambition, and being true to one's soul, which is a
Yeah.
beautiful talent. So
I
this
I
is
have to tell
important.
you something that this is an archetype that I'm super drawn to in people. And
Wait, the one the explorer?
the explorer.
Okay.
I think it's because it's one that I've always kind of wanted to embody more of, just to
Hmm.
have that like that bravery to just kind of be able to pick up and travel. And I go places, but I don't feel like it's as limitless as I've maybe desired and
Yeah.
seen in other people. And yeah, that's been something that it will definitely draw me to people when I
You've
see
got
them.
an explorer's heart. That's beautiful. Like
I've
I
always
would
wanted to be able to do it more though. Yeah.
I would be more of like the let's hang out and watch shows.
Yeah.
Like what's that archetype? You know what I mean? Like I don't know, it comes from somewhere, but that's more where I'm at now. Not
The
so much,
the homebody,
yeah, the homebody. I like that.
the hermit.
The hermit. That's and then, like I said, there's limitless archetypes. So this we're
Yeah.
not you can never hit them all.
All
All
right.
right.
The next one is the rebel. And the motto is rules are made to be broken.
Hell yeah.
Core desire is revenge or revolution. Wow,
Hmm.
that's dark.
Hmm.
Their goal is to overturn what isn't working.
Which is a
And
good thing.
yeah, greatest fear to be powerless or ineffectual. Strategy is to disrupt, destroy, or shock. Weakness, crossing over to the dark side. And crime, talent, outrageousness, and radical freedom. I wish my talent was outrageousness. That sounds so
Yeah,
cool.
it's almost like it reminds me of like sometime in some rare cases, I'm sure, but like the activists, right?
Yeah, oh, 100%. That's the thing that like I almost like screams at me when I hear this one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think of three things.
Okay, I'm
Three
listening.
things.
Politicians, activists, and
The activists, I think of Marlon Brando and James Dean.
okay. Yep.
You'd like I mean maybe less James Dean, just rebel without a cause. I
Hmm.
just think of that film title, but then I think of Marlon Brando and what was it, the Wild One, where he's in like the motorcycle gang.
It's funny that you say that because I think of like Iggy Pop
Oh, the
and
Traveler. That song, "The Traveler" by Iggy Pop. That's
yeah.
actually Explorer right there.
And
That's
like
funny. I never.
also, like Sid Vicious and like punk almost.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
100%. The Sex Pistols were political activists,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, they
All
embody.
the Queen, like the shock,
Yep.
shock, destroy, disrupt. That was punk, right?
Punk. Yeah, punk started as such like a political rebel archetype, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I think that's a really cool way to view it.
Mm. I think the next one really kind of, as we've mentioned in the past, screams like it's kind of where we land, you know what I mean, in terms of our like who we are, and it's the lover, obviously, right?
Obviously. You don't grow a mustache like Greg's and not have a little bit of the lover in you.
That's right, and the core desire is that just intimacy and experience, really, which are both important. The goal is being in a relationship with people,
Wait, you didn't
work,
say the motto,
and
did you?
surroundings they love, and the motto is you're the only one, right?
Wait,
Like this is the
you're the only
archetype.
one,
Who,
comma, baby.
who's the archetype for this? And like, look, who did some of the best work, like pulling out what's in the subconscious and like putting it on paper is like Shakespeare, right?
Yeah.
So the archetype
Richard
for the
Gere
lover. Don't say
in
that. So you're gonna say the archetype for the love is Richard Gere. I was gonna say Romeo.
Richard Gere, American Gigolo.
Yeah. Okay. Officer and Gentleman. Actually, he was
Pretty Woman.
a pretty woman too. So, to become more and emotionally and physically attractive is a strategy, and the weakness is outward directed desire to please others at the risk of losing your own identity. So it's like
Ooh.
lust in a sense, right? So the talent is passion, gratitude, appreciation, commitment. And the lover is also known as the partner, the friend, the enthusiast, the sensualist, the spouse.
So, I mean, one thing to say about this, I mean, because when we say the lover, you just think that it's like this person that's just looking for
Yeah.
sexual intimacy the whole time, but it's actually talking about relationships.
Yes.
So you're someone who might love relationships and
Hmm.
want the intimate relationships. And I almost feel like a weakness of this could be fear of losing your relationship, sticking in relationships that maybe aren't working because you're afraid to be alone, or being that person that jumps like this relationship's over and immediately gets into a new relationship. It's not just going around and sleeping with each other. I don't think that's what
No, no, no.
Jung meant when he said the lover.
And what's so fascinating too is what the danger of all of these archetypes is if you get too tied up in an archetype, you lose yourself. So you're not the archetype.
Yeah.
The archetype is the thing, the like framework that already exists that you can kind of identify with. It's like the like a marker of personality, right? And you don't want to become that thing. You want to bounce off that thing
Yeah.
and take parts of that thing and look at that thing, but not become that thing. Because ultimately you are yourself. It's like you are the thing navigating the world. You're also the thing navigating your subconscious. So it's not, it's, you are separate from all of it.
Yeah.
And you're deciding who you want to be along the way. And that's why it constantly changes.
Sure. This next one I actually think is me. The when I'm
Okay.
reading it. No, and I'm not even saying in like a facetious way. I'll explain. So the creator or the artist,
Okay.
the motto is if you can imagine it, it can be done.
Hmm.
The core desire is to create things of enduring value. Your goal is to realize a vision. Your greatest fear, though, is mediocre vision or execution. And that's one I struggle with.
Hmm.
So strategy would be to develop an artistic control and skill. Task would be to create culture, express your own vision. Weakness is perfectionism and bad solutions. And your talent is obviously creativity and imagination. This one, like as I was like reading through it, it was kind of ringing really heavy with me. That's all stuff that like that mediocre vision thing that in like if I get, I think I might have described this before, but like I literally get ideas in my head that I'm like, oh, that'd be cool to like draw, or that'd be cool to like talk
Hmm.
about on a podcast, or that'd be cool to write about. And then my struggle is actually executing because then I get really in my head about, well, what if I put it out there and it's not how I see it in my head?
I mean, you'd have to work on like what is your idea of mediocrity? You know what I mean? Because it's
Mm.
like you could think about that. Like, what are your metrics that you're basing that on? Because we could look at sometimes, hey, maybe we don't have as many podcast listeners as, some of the giants. But then if you put everybody we had that listeners in a room, or no, you couldn't, right? I mean, like in a space, it would take up a lot of space.
And then
So,
we looked at other ways to gauge value of it.
mhm,
Like, well, sure, our numbers could be larger, but think about this message that we got from such and such person
mhm,
that was absolutely
across the
amazing,
world. Yeah.
or this yeah, 100% across the world. Or this message from this other person that said, "Thank you so much for supporting me in this time that was really tough for me." It's like those are things that have zero measure but are
Mhm.
super in like they're almost they're invaluable, right? They're the
Invaluable.
things that provide that intrinsic motivation. You're exactly right. That's I think the way that you have to work through things like that. And definitely, that's been helpful for me. I it's harder for me with like visual stuff, like a
Hmm.
visual idea, seeing it in my head. And then when I start putting it down, I'm like, it doesn't look the same. And
I
then I
know.
get really,
I know.
really, really head like in my head. So
I'm kind of, yeah, no, I understand that for sure. And it's interesting because you do kind of you're the force that keeps us rolling with this, really. And so we need that for sure. The next one is the jester. You only live once. That's what they say. They were the original YOLOs,
YOLO.
right? So the core desire is to live in the moment with full enjoyment. Full enjoyment. That's the key to them. And that's so a lot of this is interesting because it's like Aristotle's golden mean, right? Balance. Too much joking around is very bad. Not enough is kind of bad too. So
Sure.
the goal is to have a great time and lighten up the world. And the biggest fear is like being boring or boring others. So the strategy is like to play and make jokes and be funny. So this is like the sad comedian or the happy comedian. It depends, right?
Mm.
So the weakness is, frivolity and just wasting time, like wasting your life away. It's almost like Bill Burr is an interesting guy because like he'll make these like political sort of comments, which are actually kind of interesting and have a lot of merit. He's a smart guy. But then like when asked about it with the media will ask him to kind of like elaborate and he'll be like, "Why? I'm a dancing clown. Like, what do you
So he
like?"
kind of almost like double um retracts,
So,
like not doubles down, but like
yeah, no, it's interesting though because like I do identify with what he's saying though because it's like, yeah, like I said that, but like don't read too much into it. After all, I've devoted my whole life to like joking around.
sure.
It's like that's how I feel, but like he's almost like turning it back on the journalist and being like, no, like you dig in.
Yeah.
I mean, you
No,
dig in and
I
tell me if what I said was like
I
made
get
sense.
that for sure. I mean, the only thing that stands out with me for me with him is he his sets can be very like
Yes, they can.
direct about what his
Yes,
view
they
is
can.
on a certain
And
thing,
of course, by
you
him
know?
saying that, it's almost like taking the onus off himself and being like,
Yeah,
well, I can say whatever I
that's what
want
I
because I'm just,
wonder.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so the next one we have the sage, which the motto for that one would be the truth will set you free. And their core desire is to find the truth. And their goal is to use intelligence and analysis to understand the world. Their biggest fear is to be being duped, misled,
Hmm.
or ignorant. So not knowing something about whatever it is that they're seeking. Um, their strategy would be seeking out information and knowledge, self reflection, and understanding the thought processes. The weakness for them is they can study details forever and then just never act. And their
You know who
talent
this is?
is wisdom and intelligence. This is like
Remember,
conspiracy theory people, no?
well, that
Like
also
UFO
like,
people.
remember the Englishman and the Alchemist? Like
Oh yeah.
all
Yeah.
about his books and his books and his books
Yeah.
and not
Oh,
really seeing like the
good
truth.
point. Good
Looking
point.
for the truth, but
Yep.
like not finding it because you're looking too hard for the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe there's no truth.
I feel like there's a lot of people that fall into that.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like you can get look because the truth is kind of a strange thing, constantly shifting and not always what it seems, right? And different for everybody. I don't know. It is an interesting thing. Like you would think you arrive at the truth and not really arrive at the truth. Like
Do you
there
do
was a
another weird like analogy for this is it kind of feels also like how there's so much desire to understand everything that's going on with like political climate and people want to know all the stuff that's like but then they don't necessarily do anything with that knowledge.
Mhm.
So
It's like,
it's
what's the point?
yeah, so we can have they'll have like political debates and they'll flex all their the things that they know about these things, but nothing's like they're not actually doing anything
In the end.
in the end other than just maybe arguing with someone on Facebook
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then blocking most of their family members.
Yes. Yes. That don't agree with them because they have a
Yeah.
different truth.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's funny because they've arrived at a different truth.
When someone blocks you for that, I hope everybody screams out, "I'll get back at you, you sage," or something like that.
Yes.
Make sure
Yes.
you call them a sage.
Sage. Or, well, I guess they wouldn't be a magician, but I like the idea of the magician. They make things happen, right?
Yeah.
And they understand the fundamental laws of the universe. And they make dreams come true. That's like what
Yeah,
magicians
yeah.
do. And I think like that their greatest fear is interesting because it's like unintended negative consequences. It's like it's almost like that thing where it's like you're messing with forces you don't completely understand.
Sure.
Like that comes in,
Hmm.
So they
Like all
want to
those
make things
people
happen,
playing
but
with
they didn't
AI right now.
respect it, not respecting the process in a sense, right?
Yeah, like all the people playing with AI right now.
Totally. Those are magicians. and it's dangerous as hell. Like I fall for it. Like if I'm on like that's why I don't even go on hardly go on social media anymore because it was like I was on this thing like watching who's the girl that played Wednesday? It was like her and someone else. They were
Jenna
having a
Ortega.
conversation, and it wasn't. And like I'm watching this, I'm like that's a weird thing for her to be talking about, and it wasn't her. It was like an AI thing being her, and it completely like I could have walked away from that, been like, oh, so she's into this, and like perpetuated that sort of
Yeah.
conversation, which is a strange thing. Um, and they're the magician's goal, strategy is to develop a vision and live by it. And the weakness is exactly that, like becoming manipulative, right?
Hmm.
Like you want so bad for people to understand and make things happen and make their dreams come true. But how do you do that safely and
Sure.
justly? It's interesting.
Yeah.
Finding win-win solutions is their talent, though. Everyone wins.
It's interesting to think if so some of these titles, obviously, like these have been around for a while now, these
Mm,
archetype titles. It's fun, it's interesting to think about like if
how
they
they've changed.
maybe meant something different at different times too.
Totally.
Like our idea of a magician is like
Oh,
David
absolutely.
Blaine.
And it's
But
like
I
that's
wonder
not
what
what
a
we're talking about here.
magician meant at that time when the way they refer to it.
It's a
I know
great,
another word was like wizard that you could also use too. And
even that kind of antiquated there. Not a ton of
yeah,
wizards going around.
right.
But like, the visionary, um, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about what used to be the shaman, the healer, the medicine man is now like the tech giant, the
Yeah,
Bezos, the
right, right.
fucking, like Musk and those dudes. Like yes, that's like they've got some vision and maybe some things that they're doing are working, but like what is the expense and like are we being manipulated by some of this? Just
Yeah, I guess today's version would all be about like tech
AI
and
shit, like you said.
AI. Yeah. It'd be like the technological innovator would be like the archetype or something like that of
Yeah, like
today.
like you could calm the world down by showing them something on a screen. Like, hey, look, we did this. Peace now. We have peace now. But it could not be true at all.
It would be totally fake.
You
Yes.
know? It's just and they're like, presto, but you've manipulated the masses. So,
All right. Our last one is the ruler. Their motto is power isn't everything. It's the only thing.
uh-huh.
Their core desire is control. Their goal is to create a prosperous, successful family or community. So that's not as bad as it sounded in the
Hmm.
first two things. Their strategy is to exercise power. Their greatest fear is chaos or being overthrown. Weakness is being authoritarian or unable to delegate. And their talent is to take responsibility and leadership. So it's a real, what would you say? This is a tough one because I feel like with this archetype, if you embody this archetype, if this is one that you tend to lean more towards with your actions, a lot of what you have to navigate when you're making choices and decisions is, am I leaning into this too much? Am I being too controlling? Am
Hmm.
I being too authoritarian here? uh am I allowing some of my fears to kind of cloud my choices right now? So this is like a perfect example of how you use the archetype to help you be more authentic, but also to guide your choices in a healthy way, right?
Hmm.
So that you can have better relationships with people. Because if you go into a job and you start making really like controlling decisions and just thinking all about your own leadership and yourself and not, making it so people can't take over for you, that's going to rub people the wrong way. So you have to kind of be able to like understand the choices you're making and all that
And you
stuff.
you, so you don't want to rub people the wrong way at your job.
That could be a lawsuit.
Yes,
Absolutely.
then you fell headfirst into the lover archetype accidentally. Okay. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like, and maybe again, like this is something that was a bigger deal, historically speaking, because they say some of the best periods in history are like ruled by one benevolent leader, right?
But
So,
but think about how even like such a smaller faction, this can be a problem for people.
mhm.
Like we see it at our work. I'm not
We
gonna
do,
say
yes.
anything, but like I'm not gonna say anything inappropriate here. Greg, don't ask me to name names. Stop it,
I will
Greg.
not unless you really
I'm
want
not
to.
going to. No, no.
Okay.
But like you could see how like if someone were to come in and that ruler with that ruler archetype and start to really like take control of the environment. I mean, we're a bunch of grown adults. Come on,
Yes, I know. Yes. There
right?
should be another, they should name this archetype. But see, we can't even do inside jokes right here, but I know what the archetype should be named.
Yeah,
But, it's funny because, like, as you're saying this, it's like, know thyself. That's on the Temple Delphi. That's like the little aphorism there. That's what it is.
I put it there.
Uh,
Yeah,
you did? That was big. That was a good call.
thank you.
Um, and Jung, I almost said Freud, he, like, the important thing to remember is you're navigating all these things. Like you don't choose every mood, you don't choose every archetype. They come out in different ways, and it's like these are just your inherited dispositions. That's not my term. That's Young. So you didn't choose that. It happened to you. Like there's parts of this that show up, and you navigate that. And it's just like the forms that our instincts assume, which is another beautiful way to put it. That is not mine. That's also Young. It's isn't that kind of cool? Like it's the forms. So Plato, borrowing from Plato, that our instincts assume.
Hmm,
Right? Like if you think about it, like
interesting.
that power, that's the form
Yeah,
that our instinct assumes. That's a
right.
crazy way to put it.
And it also kind of highlights that thing that we're not always fully conscious of the things that we lean into, right?
Hmm.
So this self-awareness, by looking at this stuff and really trying to like see where you land and see where your tendencies are,
Hmm.
you can make some of those subconscious. Would it be subconscious, right?
Yeah, in a lot
Not
of ways.
unconscious, right?
The subconscious, the way they affect you subconsciously is like, ooh, I noticed that like this instinct took over and now I'm like being
Yes.
bossy at work.
So now it would help you kind of see that and understand it better.
Yeah, like someone at our work should see that and say, hmm, how do I become more of like a sage or caregiver or
An
any other
innocent,
one?
and every man, anything.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I just find it all kind of interesting and heady, and hopefully people can like see this throughout everything, like Harry Potter and literature and just it's everywhere. What is that saying? Like everything, always, everywhere at once, whatever the hell.
Everything all at once or something like that.
Something like that.
That
Yeah.
movie,
Yeah.
everything all at once, something
Something
like
like that.
that. Yeah.
Oh, and you know what else this like we should dip a toe in soon, and I really think real soon is because where you see a lot of these archetypes is in fairy tales. So like the Brothers Grimm, that could reveal like a ton about human nature and the importance of like collecting stories and like recognizing archetypes and imposing archetypes in yourself and others, right? So it's because it's important to notice to recognize the negative archetypes too, like
Mm.
this evil stepmother or whatever. I don't know. I'm
Right.
thinking of fairy tales, but like fairy tales could tell us a lot about human nature, don't you think? Like getting into like a little
Absolutely.
grim stuff, that'd be fun. And getting those real stories. So I don't know. I think that's all we got for our archetypes. What do you think?
Yes. I think that's it.
Okay.
Hopefully that was okay.
Feels like a fever dream.
Suddenly it just all hit me like a wave and realizing, oh my God, I'm talking into a microphone.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm actually on camera right now.
So we don't have to
So
say the Patreon thing, but rate and
that's already
review.
out. Rate and review. I'm not going to say it again. Do it. Just
Yeah.
do it. There was none
Thank you,
last week.
Spotify. Apple, step it up.
Yeah. There was none last week. I was like bummed. I wanted to read something nice.
I know.
I had to rely on my
We did have a few like
Google reviews from work, and I was like, oh, that's not bad though.
we got a few like ratings
Did we?
from yeah on Spotify,
Oh, nice.
but
Nice. Always feels good.
yeah, no
Even
reviews.
if it's bad, it feels good.
Well, the number didn't change, so it must be at least on par.
All right. So yeah, what else can we say? Um, we have a long list of topics that we got to get into at some point. I do my best to kind of mix up, how we're doing them, whether they're things that people have recommended, but then also trying to like make sure Greg feels okay with, getting his recommendations in there once in a while. And then
Like
no,
Grim.
yeah, he really wants to do Grim. And then making sure I get some of my stuff in there as well. So if you've given us a request and we haven't gone to it yet, we will. It's just like trust me, it's a long ass
It
list.
is, yeah, and we will.
We definitely will though. But yeah, and if you have ideas that you haven't thrown out yet, then please throw them out here, because I'd love to keep adding to that list so that we continue to make these episodes.
In which we will.
Yeah. All right. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Thank
Have
you.
a great night, and we will see you next week. Peace
See you
out.
next week.
Happy June.
Happy June. Yes. It's the first of the month.
Wake up, wake up.
Yep, that's right.